Welcome, everyone. In honor of the 31st anniversary of the ADA, we have planned a program to focus on the issue of mental health, as it has become a prominent issue in this pressure cooker of this last year. With that in mind, Bonnie Silvestri, our Sarasota County ADA coordinator, met with speakers at other ADA coordinators programs during this last year, and she's pulled together 3 experts to speak to us on this delicate topic. Please welcome Bonnie Silvestri.
Hi, thank you so much, Alicia. I am very excited that we have so many people here today. I wanted to share a little bit about the idea for this event. As Alicia said, I'm the ADA coordinator for Sarasota County. And over the summer, I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Kathy Moore and Dr. Amanda Sharp. And they are going to be 2 of our speakers today. They are both from the Florida Mental Health Institute. And they came to our ADA Coordinators Network meeting. And we all, if everyone can just mute themselves as they're coming in. And we all had the opportunity to talk to them about the way that the pandemic had been really making us feel. And I think that we haven't had a time to really take a breath and think about the impact of the past since March 2020, all of these months where we continue on and on and on and on with what we had thought was going to end after a couple of weeks. So the mental health toll on the global society has been just immense. And we think that it's important for us to take this time to take stock of where we are and where we can go, because the COVID pandemic has also showed us some really important things, like taking time for ourselves, being able to talk more openly about needing to take a mental health day, being able to speak more openly about it's okay to not be okay. So we've really been able to kind of pull back that stigma associated with talking about mental health, because we've all been experiencing something simultaneously. So we don't want to lose that moment. And so we thought it would be perfect to get together with some really fantastic experts. Also during the summer, Dr. Catherine Clements did one of her first in-person forest bathing adventures. And I had the opportunity to do that. And it was absolutely phenomenal. And she said she would be able to put together something so that we could do it here on Zoom and you could have that experience. It's called Shindenyoku. So we're all going to get the chance to do that today as well. So I really want to welcome you here today. Take this moment to take stock of how you're feeling. And then we will have a discussion as we continue on with the program. So I'm going to introduce Drs. Kathy Moore and Dr. Amanda Sharp. They're both really fantastic. So we have a powerhouse group together today that we really want to welcome them to our community. They're both from FMHI, which is the Florida Mental Health Institute at USF. And it's really important that we get to talk to academics who've taken time to research the impact that COVID-19 has had on all of us. So I want to turn it over to them, and then we will go to Dr. Catherine Clements as well from IFAS. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the introduction, Bonnie. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me just one moment while I do that.
Thank you, Bonnie. Again, while Amanda does that, I just want to just say that the relationship that Amanda and I have had with Bonnie over this past year has been great. We've done a couple of different events with her and are just so excited to see this collaboration going and are very happy to be with you all this afternoon. We're going to be talking about COVID and mental health. I feel like it's been in the news every single day. I think Bonnie was just saying that there was a headline just today about mental health issues in COVID, and it just seems to be never ending. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and ways to cope, and some skills that you may not have thought about, and opportunities to share your experiences through a polling. So we are, again, as Bonnie mentioned, Kathleen Moore and Amanda Sharp, and I'm the executive director of the Florida Mental Health Institute, and we're housed within the College of Behavioral and Community Sciences at USF. And we do a lot of research and evaluation, but we also do a lot of outreach and training. So the work that I've been doing over the past 20 years has been, I consider my laboratory really the community, and really trying to show impact and work with agencies to make change in areas surrounding mental health, addiction, child welfare, jail diversion, some of those really societal issues that are just really hard to grapple with. And in particular, over the past year or two, especially during COVID, we've been asked to do multiple trainings in the area of mental health and addiction. You can go to the next slide, Amanda.
Mm-hmm. Oh, maybe. There we go. There you go.
We by now, right? We should have a grapple on virtual platforms, but
there's always something new.
There's always technology issues.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, let me just move my gallery so I can see slides. So, again, and you probably have read or seen or talked with colleagues and friends and family about why COVID has triggered mental health issues. And I think what really, and we can talk about this later, one of the golden nuggets that has come up over the past 19 months, right? Yes, it's been 19 months, is the fact that we've all been experiencing mental health issues on some form or another, right? On a continuum, whether that's anxiety issues, depression, stress, issues related to substance use, we're drinking too much, maybe maybe you noticed your family members taking pills or other drugs, and it's become a little bit, the stigma surrounding these issues has become a little bit less pronounced, which is great. And which is one of the reasons why it's so nice to be able to kind of share some of this information with you all, and to really be able to have this as a collaborative. So if you look right here, right, you can see COVID. And so some of the things that are surrounding this, anxiety, and not just mental health anxiety, but anxiety about our physical health, right? So we have a runny nose. Does that mean we have COVID, right? So we run and get tested. And it seems that we're constantly dealing with that with our family and our friends. For our loved ones' lives, right? People, have gotten sick. Some have died. Some have been sick for quite a long time. Other feelings of hopelessness and that social withdrawal that is really, really big. I mean, we've been so fortunate that we have a virtual platform, whether it's Zoom, whether it's Teams, whatever the platform is, where we can actually see one another, which I think has been such a blessing. But we're not there. We can't touch the person, right? We can't walk into the person, your colleague's office next door and just start chatting. Amanda and I we do a lot of work together, and it seems like we're always constantly having meetings one after the other. So that could lead to kind of, Zoom burnout, if you will, where you're constantly switching gears from one meeting to another, from one project to another. So that has its own issues, right? And that can trigger a lot of stress. So, we've been doing this, if you can believe it, for 19 months now, right? So we've had kind of this pause in our normal routine and our social relationships, right? Some have taken a dive, maybe some have gotten closer. I never thought 2 years ago to actually do a Zoom call with somebody, but now it's just natural, where you say, instead of talking to somebody on the phone, you actually do something interactive and you're on your computer. But the effects of this have definitely are definitely going to have long-term impact. And I think we're just starting now to study some of those effects. Another issue is, we're thinking we were out of the woods this summer or early summer, late spring. And then we had kind of the Delta variant, right? The Delta effect, if you will, where we weren't quite out of the woods. And seems like we're thrust even into a more severe stage with children not being vaccinated, and the surging spread of those that are not vaccinated, right? Are ones that are getting sick. And so there's this whole other surge now that's going on, where we might have thought earlier, a couple of months ago, okay, Now I can think about the fall. I can think about my kids going back to school. I can think about going back to work. Everything's going to be fine. And it really caused another shift. So your kids may have been in school, all of a sudden, now they have to be quarantined for another 10 days. And so really kind of that thinking despairingly, when is this going to be over, right? What can I do? You want to go to the next slide, Amanda?
Yes.
Thanks. So, as I said, we're just starting now to research some of these issues. And some of the preliminary work that researchers have done around COVID have looked at what are some challenges that families are facing, that individuals are facing before and then now after COVID, right? And a study that was conducted by the Maryland Department of Health looked at some of these different challenges, and you can see that the ones that are really popping up to the highest frequency, right, the highest effort, are those related to mental health, anxiety, depression, loneliness, social isolation, right, lack of financial resources, which is, again, is huge. We could have a whole other talk about talking about how that is impacting all of us. Returning of symptoms, right? So this whole kind of surge again. Substance use, right? So when we think about mental health, we really also want to talk about substance use and addiction as kind of part of that umbrella, knowing that, when you're home and you're alone, one of those kind of negative coping skills may be drinking, right? Drinking too much, not even realizing, oh, I've just already had 2 or 3 glasses of wine or 2 or 3 bottles of beer. And so that has been definitely impacted by COVID. And, I think as we continue on, there's going to be more and more research looking at the pre and post effects of COVID and how that's impacted all of us. Next slide. So other issues that we might want to think about during the pandemic and kind of post after is that, your whole household may have experienced interpersonal stress, right? We could all think about that due to shared space, close proximity. Your kids were at home this past year doing work virtually. You may have been at home working virtually, and kind of those close quarters. Even if you love somebody to death, right? That is very difficult to try to navigate and to kind of figure out, where do I have my space, right? I have this little corner in the living room, that's my workspace, where before I was able to leave my home, go to work, it was kind of separate. Now everything is kind of coming together, and not just myself, but if you have children, all of them are now on top of you, and you're trying to help navigate them getting their work done. So that has been extremely difficult to manage. And again, even seeping into this fall semester, we're still seeing some of that. Financially, there's been a lot of issues around losing employment, and that's going to affect, what you can do, what you can purchase, lack of resources for school, maybe housing has been in jeopardy. So that can be extremely, extremely stressful, and how to be able to navigate that. This is an interesting one, limited interaction with your age group. So you may be so worried and so anxious about, getting everything done in terms of your work and your home, that you've kind of dropped off really interacting with your friends and really being able to have that social group. So thinking about ways to reinvigorate that and doing the things that you used to do like pre-COVID, maybe it's a little bit different, but still kind of continuing to do those activities that you really like, right? Whatever those are. And because of all these things, right, that is going to affect you possibly in a negative way, right? It can increase your stress and anxiety. It can increase your panic. So even if you are starting to go back to work, starting to go back to school, what does that mean? Does my child have to wear a mask? Do I have to wear a mask? Do I have to socially distance? What if somebody next to me in my workspace does have COVID? All of these questions are going through your mind as you're trying to also continue your normal day of work and school. So it's become quite the challenge in trying to do all this. And I think we're just now, starting to have all these conversations about, okay, what do we do? What's normal, right? And I think we want to take a deep breath and just, it's okay. It's okay to experience some anxiety and stress surrounding all of this. And I think the more that we talk about it and the more that we normalize it, makes it a little bit easier. I think the next slide, Amanda, is the Cahoots.
Yeah.
Cool. So now we're going to do an experiential activity with all of you, and Amanda's gonna take the baton.
Yes, thank you, Kathy. And I think all of that is to hopefully not just tell you things you already know or trigger your anxieties more by listing them all, but really to start normalizing the conversation around what we're experiencing. Hopefully you found, you related to some of the things that Kathy was talking about, and this will just give us another chance to sort of open the dialogue and resonate with one another a little bit more. So if you guys could, either on your cell phones, yes, you have permission to multitask now, either on your cell phones, if you have a smartphone, or on another screen on your computer, or another web page, if you could type in kahoot.it and go to that page, kahoot.it. I'm going to transfer over to that screen. Do you guys now see my Kahoot screen?
Yes.
Yes, you can. Is it big or is it small? Or you can see the whole thing?
Yes.
It's a window inside the window.
Okay, let me make it bigger then. Okay, so once you guys go, yes. So you're going to click play and you're going to type in this number that you see here on my screen. So that will enter you into our group game, and they'll ask you for your name. So once you add in your name, and once I see all of you added in here, then we can start playing. There we go. This is a little multimedia for us. We use this in classrooms and teaching just to get people engaged. And it's not like in this virtual world, right? We can all raise our hands and ask questions. So this is just a way to get everybody's voices included. I see 11 people have joined so far. Bonnie, how many people are on the call? Do you know?
There are 21 participants.
21. Okay, I'll give folks a little bit longer to join. If you're having trouble, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask me questions. Just give you another 30 seconds or so for others to join if we're having trouble. Again, you go to kahoot.it and it should ask you for this game pin number. So you enter in 1483935. You can put in your name, you can put in a nickname, whatever you feel comfortable with. All right, is anybody on here still trying it?
It says search item, enter your search item. Is that the place?
What's that?
It says enter your search item.
Yeah, so that's probably your search bar. So you just want to put in kahoot.it.
Yeah, I'm on that,
you are
page. But
okay, and then you put in
where to enter the code.
If you
play the game?
Yes, play the game, and then it will ask you to enter in that code. So 1483935. Did you find it?
I'm refreshing the page.
Okay.
It's okay. Visit website, it says.
Okay.
And the games.
I'm not sure what's going on that end. If you would like, you are welcome to write down your responses on a piece of paper or respond in the chat box on Zoom too.
I can do that.
Yeah, it's just meant to be like a mental exercise. So
that's
just
fine.
A way to engage. Sorry you're having trouble.
No problem.
All right, I'm going to push start. Okay, so we're just going to ask you a couple of questions just to start sort of dialoguing about how you're feeling about the pandemic. Before we get into this meditation zone, let's think about what sort of issues we've been dealing with. So when you think about the pandemic and your mental health, what's one word that comes to mind? So type a word into that box for that question. You have 9 more seconds. What's one word that comes to mind? Yeah, so it looks like several people put in the word stress, and I'm noticing that really all of these words kind of have to do with, well, with struggle. I suppose wellness doesn't, but maybe the prioritization of wellness at this point has become super important for everyone. Feeling overwhelmed, the challenge of this, the uncertainty, feeling never ending. Those are a lot of the things that Kathy was talking about as far as this feeling like we are in a pressure cooker, as Alicia said in the beginning. Thank you for sharing that. So the next poll question, I just want you to answer yes or no. I have noticed negative changes in my mental health or the mental health of those around me since the pandemic began. Either you agree or you disagree. You have noticed those negative changes or you have not. Just to, again, to get a pulse on this group and see how we're all feeling. Yeah, so it looks like the majority of folks, which we anticipated, but sometimes it's nice to see it actualized and right in front of us and numeric. Looks like majority of us have felt that. We have felt like this has impacted our mental health and our well-being in a negative way. And how could it not in many ways, right? I think there is a silver lining, which we will discuss later. And there could be some benefits to having this separate time and this change societally or within our lives, but it also brings on a lot of challenge. So our next word cloud, I want you to think of the word or a phrase, what's been impacting your mental health the most during this pandemic? So a short phrase, a couple of words, or one word. Generate another word cloud around what's impacting us in this group the most during the pandemic. Impacting your mental health the most. Yeah. Yeah. As these word clouds generate, I'm just really struck by how, I know not everybody was able to type it in, but I certainly resonate with this. The worrying, the fear of getting sick, the being alone, like these are things that we haven't always had to deal with. And it's scary, I guess, is the word that I'm thinking of. It can feel, as you guys said in the last one, very overwhelming to be feeling these ways. I think the intention, again, of this group and of having this conversation is to normalize that you're not alone in feeling those ways, that there are lots of people that are feeling the same, and that in that community, there's strength. So I'm going to pass it back over to Kathy. We'll go back to our slides and talk a little bit about sort of what we can do to help ourselves to feel better amidst some of these hardships. Let me click back over to that slide. All right. So you can see it okay?
Yeah, we did it.
Okay, awesome.
Just so if everybody could also keep the Kahoots on, because we have a couple more questions that we want to ask in a couple of minutes. So yeah, so I think
we have 2 other questions after we go through this, so don't exit it yet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think, we've established that, there's definitely some challenges that we've had to deal with over the past almost 2 years now. And, so, okay, we know that, but what can we do about it? And I'm sure that you've, thought about ways to cope. And some of us kind of go down that rabbit hole and start doing things that, may not be the most positive coping tools. But how do you get out of that rut? How do you start thinking about, okay, what can I do to uplift myself? What can I do to uplift others around me? And so thinking about your loved ones, whether it's, your children, your spouse, your parents, your friends, right? Your colleagues. What can you do? And I think, we came up with a couple of different things, and I'm sure there's many more that you can think about. But, in this kind of storm, right? This virtual abstract storm that we have with COVID, trying to be calm, and trying to kind of, be that calming source, can be very helpful, right? Children especially, they're very in tune and very aware of behavior of others, right? Particularly their parents. And so if you're modeling calm and assurance, then that will trickle down to them. In the same tone, trying to maintain normalcy, right? So what does that mean? Really, continuing your routine. So yes, we've all had to shift in different ways, but trying to have that consistency in when you go to bed, when you eat, right? Because if you're at home, now you're not all of a sudden leaving at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning to drop your kids off to school and going to work. There's been a shift. Now, some of us may have already been able to go back to work, go back to school. Things are still, at the college that Amanda and I are at this semester, it's still been very different. We still can't have large group meetings, right? Most of us are still, when we're not teaching, are still working at home. And when we are in the office, we have to wear a mask and still socially distance. So it's still very different. Listening actively, right? So meaning that being present, right? All of that social media. So we may have been, when I talk about negative coping skills, one of those things may have been getting on your Instagram, getting on your Facebook, all of that social media, all of that news that bombards us every day. So trying to kind of remove that and just having a conversation with somebody, right? And being present and listening actively. While you're doing that, it's really important to validate and acknowledge their feelings and know that it's okay to feel that way, right? And by doing that, that will help them calm. And you're not alone, right? We're all feeling a bit of anxiety and stressful during this time. And then encouraging those healthy coping skills. So whatever that is for the person. And by confronting how you're feeling rather than avoiding it, that actually should help alleviate those feelings. Go to the next slide, Amanda. Mm-hmm. So what does this mean, right? And one of the things that I've always said is that you have to be able to nurture yourself in order to nurture others, right? So you really want to be able to address and redefine what your own self-care is during this time. So, again, being able to recognize and validating issues, right? Whatever that is, your grief, your anxiety, and being able to manage those thoughts. How can you do that? We have this great exercise that Catherine's going to do in a little bit on mindfulness, right? And connecting with nature. And so, whatever you can do to kind of make that shift to positive behavior and really try to manage whatever feelings you have is great. Practicing gratitude, right? Helping others, right? Instead of focusing on our own issues, being able to really kind of reach out and help others can be really important. I love taking breaks from the news is really important. I've, pretty much stopped watching the news because it's always about the same issues, right? You might want to get a 5 or 10 minute, in the morning, what's going on for the day, but really being able to replace that, which tends to be negative, right? With something positive, right? Instead of watching the news for 30 minutes, maybe go out and take a walk, right? Being able to take care of your body and being physically active. Whether that's doing yoga, whether that's going out and walking, doing another form of exercise. I mean, we're so lucky that we live in the state of Florida where it's night and now it's getting to be beautiful. Right now that we're into fall, it's so nice to be outside and be able to do some of those activities that we love. I think the next slide is yours, Amanda.
Yeah, it is. I guess just before going there, I just wanted to emphasize this. this little red word up here, the redefining of self-care during COVID. I think Kathy touched on so many things that, I know I've found effective, and I hope that you guys have tried out for yourselves. I think one of the things that I've really noticed though is, self-care doesn't look the same as maybe it always has. Self-care maybe used to think, oh, self-care is lighting a candle and taking a bath, or self-care is, getting a pedicure, or self-care, these sort of externalized things that we think about as the image of self-care. And sometimes that can start to feel, even exercise can start to feel like more of a should than an I want to or I need to. And I think part of this defining of self-care has to do with giving yourself compassion and being kind to yourself around what really works for you, rather than the pressure of, as Kathy mentioned, of social media, of us telling you what might work for you. Right? It's about sort of finding out for yourself, maybe going to the gym isn't my self-care. Maybe it is it's binging that Netflix series, right? So it's about having compassion for yourself as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, Amanda. I mean, whatever your jam is, that's what you want to go to. And again, by doing that, by having self-care for yourself, then that will help you, do that with others. So really, really important to kind of figure out what you need first.
Yeah. So on that note, let's go back to our Kahoot. And our next question is an open-ended question, again, to brainstorm from you guys. Like, we just listed a bunch of things that might work, but what coping strategies have helped you during the pandemic that you would want to share with others? I love this picture of the dog because you can just see the pure joy. But what coping strategies have helped you during the pandemic? Just a short response would be great. And we'll ask you to, once you type it in, to highlight a word. It just kind of keeps it color coded or emphasizes your main points. So don't get confused if that pops up. When we had this conversation with another group before, I know personally I came away with some other ideas, things that I hadn't really thought of before. Somebody had said taking a break in the middle of the day and just like watching a couple of funny videos. Like, there's something about just finding joy in small moments that I don't know, that really resonate now. So just a few more seconds to write down what works for you.
Yeah, and there's one in the chat, Amanda, that we can add to as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, let's show those answers. Yes. Okay. Reading fun books, praying, watching videos, meditation, online art classes, music, meditation. I'm seeing a lot of meditation, reflection, exercise, book clubs. And this is amazing because it sort of becomes this reminder of everything that we do have at our fingertips, rather than the limitations that maybe this pandemic has put on us. And I think these are things that I don't know about you. I know for myself, maybe taking that for granted. It was after the first phase of the pandemic with the lockdown where I was so grateful for my dog and for going on walks and for these simple things. So I feel like some of these coping strategies that you guys have up here resonate in that same way. What was the one that's in the chat? I can't see it.
Watching comedy shows.
Yeah.
Which is great, and right. I agree, Amanda. And I think what's interesting is that a lot of these are free, right? So even though we may be experiencing some financial issues, it doesn't cost money to pray or be outside or go for a walk. These are just great ways to just take a break, and you could do that for 10 minutes. You could do that for an hour.
Yeah. Thank you guys for sharing that. It's such a good reminder to just say these things out loud sometimes. All right. So this last question is another open-ended one. We mentioned sort of the silver lining of, okay, maybe finding gratitude for the simple things. But what other silver lining lessons has this pandemic taught you? What have you taken away from this that has benefited you or made you stronger in ways that maybe you didn't anticipate? A lot of my work in my research or clinical intervention is working with people with addictions. And one of the things that we know about behavior change is that when we say things out loud, and especially when we say the positive things out loud, is that it actually sort of is triggering the same part of your brain that activation comes from. So taking action, making change, doing something, it's actually more likely if you're able to say it out loud. And in this way, also, writing it out loud, becoming more conscious of it in that way. So hopefully some of these exercises will resonate with you and help to bring about that activation. The other point I wanted to make before revealing these is that this isn't to say that we have to always look on the bright side, right? We have to acknowledge first what the challenges have been. And that's why we started this conversation in that way. Right? We don't want to ignore the dark days and just look at what's light and bright and where the sun is shining. But it's important to strike a balance. I think that in this, it's easy to get stuck, but acknowledging both sides of those good days and the bad days can again be a helpful and healthy way of coping. So some of the silver linings that this has taught you guys. Slowing down. Loving your friends and family every day and out loud. I really like that because you can't always just show it when there's distance. You're saying it, right? You're having to communicate in a new way. I see communication down here, communication with loved ones, empathy for others. Yeah, we're bombarded with the hardships of our ourselves, but also those around us. And so being able to empathize with people in a different way. I know in the beginning I had a pastor friend of mine who said this little snippet. He said, well, when the pandemic first started, I remember I have this very wealthy friend who was complaining to me about not having toilet paper. And I just looked at him and said, well, now you know what it feels like to not have something. And there was a silver lining for him in his lessons about being able to find this silver lining of empathy and, getting our basic needs met. Resilient and happier, self-reliance, better coping skills, appreciation. I see that a lot too.
And in the chat was, it's only temporary and hope. And I think, again, hope is that word that we always we think about. I know, Amanda, it's we have to kind of wrap up in a minute. So I think that was the last,
I think it was too. We did the poll questions. We'll just end with this quote. I've learned that people will forget what you said. They will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And this is, again, just to emphasize that, if you're leading and living with compassion for yourself and for others, then that is what people will remember. So thank you guys so much. We are happy to, we'll have a discussion section at the end of our session today where we can certainly answer questions or have conversation with you guys. But here's also our contact information if there's anything else you'd like to know.
Perfect, Amanda. And I think this is a nice transition into Catherine's information. So Catherine, take it away.
I will
Oh,
stop
I thought I
sharing.
would just pop back in for a moment and just say that I remembered how you made me feel, because it came back again that, exactly with that quote, that we felt so relaxed and recharged. And it also gave us that time to think about the grief that we were feeling, but yet to be able to see the other side. So I just wanted to say that quickly before we move on to Catherine, who's the Ecology and Natural Resources educator for IFAS. And as I said, she is just a wonderful resource for all of us to be able to go out into nature and experience this. So you're just going to get a little taste today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you for having me. And thank you both, Amanda and Kathleen, for everything that you've shared with us today. I'm going to focus in on a particular topic, a particular coping skill. And we're going to talk a little bit before we have an experience of something called Shindenyoku. We're going to talk a little bit about the health benefits of nature. I'm going to start out by talking about stress and sort of the impacts of COVID-19 on our time spent in nature, and then how important spending that time in nature really is. And after that, after doing some slides, we'll have about an 8-minute video that I film that will hopefully, in a virtual world, take you through an experience of Shindenyoku. And I'll explain to you what that is in a moment if you're not familiar with it. So let me first start with talking about the physiology of stress. And so the physiology of stress was identified by a researcher in the mid-1950s, and his name was Hans Selye. And he came up with 3 stages of stress. And this basically explains often what we call either the fight or flight reaction. It's managed through our sympathetic nervous system, but basically it was a survival adaptation developed thousands of years ago when we were cavemen and cavewomen to help us survive things like the saber-toothed tiger outside of our caves. And basically what happens in our bodies when we are under stress is we produce a lot of hormones and neurotransmitters, things like epinephrine, which other places call adrenaline, so that's the same thing, and norepinephrine, and just this whole cascade of hormones and neurotransmitters. And what that does is it shunts blood from our brain and our digestive tract to our muscles so that we're better able to flight. We're better able to run away from that saber-toothed tiger. Our pupils dilate so we can see the saber-toothed tiger better. We have an increased heart rate and increased respiration or breathing so that we can drive that blood to those muscles. We also liberate blood sugar or glucose. And our digestive secretions and our digestive ability is decreased because none of that is important when we're under a survival situation. So all of that is so that we can either fight that saber-toothed tiger or get away and survive to another day. Well, in this day and age, we don't have saber-toothed tigers, and yet we still have the same physiology to stress. So whether it's driving on the interstate or going to work and having a difficult interaction, arguing with a family member, or now we have COVID-19. So any of these everyday stressors just drives that same physiological response in our bodies. And that stress response can lead to problems with our health, risk for disease, and something called adrenal exhaustion, where we are not resilient and not able to combat stress effectively anymore. So how many of you might feel like you've been there, maybe right now, but maybe even in the past? I know I have. So unfortunately, when we undergo ongoing stress and we get to that place of exhaustion, these are diseases that in medical research are directly linked to stress. And I'm not going to read through all of them, but notice that there's a number of them that have an asterisk after them. And those are diseases that are also some of the top 10 causes of death in our country. And so stress is directly linked to not only disease, risk for disease, but also to potential risk of death. So we really want to deprogram. Now that I've stressed you all out, Just like I've talked about the difficult stuff first, we're going to end up talking about how to deprogram from stress. We'll talk just briefly about it now, and then I'm going to come back to it as well. So the opposite of that sympathetic nervous system reaction, that fight or flight reaction, is the parasympathetic nervous system reaction. And we sometimes call this rest and digest. So we want to do away with that saber-toothed tiger response, and we want to be that nice sleeping kitty that's just taking a nap in the sunshine. When we are in that parasympathetic mode, that rest and digest mode, our heart rate slows, we have increased intestinal activity so we can digest better. We're in that state of relaxation, and our brain waves actually change, and we have less of the super active beta brain waves that make us feel sometimes chaotic and like we can't focus, and our brain is jumping from thing to thing to thing. And when we're in the parasympathetic, we have more of those theta and alpha brain waves that are those brain waves that are associated with just that really calm, alert state. Like you are still awake, you're not asleep. You are awake, but you are calm and able to process information better. So how many of us want to be in the rest and digest state? I do. So hopefully I'll help you get there by the end of my talk. So I want to talk a little bit about sort of changes in our culture, both in terms of increasing urbanization, and then also some changes that have occurred in spending time out in nature, specifically due to COVID-19. So 83% of Americans actually live in an urban area, and this is up from 64% in 1950. That's a lot of us that are living in what is considered an urban area. And usually urban areas have less tree canopy, they have less green areas, they're associated with less sort of open natural areas. And increased urbanization is also associated with higher levels of stress, anxiety, and depression. So just living in a more urban area can lead to some of these mental health concerns. And then in a study, walking in nature versus walking in an urban center showed decreased activity in the part of our brain that's associated with depression and anxiety. Walking in nature showed increased cognitive performance, so we could think better and perform better mentally. Decreased anxiety and depression, and decreased negativity. So this is just one research study that shows being out in nature really can have an impact on our overall mental health. And then I found this just shocking. There was some EPA data that was published in 2001, and it indicated that 87% of us spend time indoors, or 80% of our time is spent indoors. 6% is spent in our cars, and this was pre-COVID, so maybe that's a little different. But that only left about 7% of our time to be spent outdoors, which isn't a lot. And then when we start talking about children, because I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about children in a minute, when we start talking about children, they spend half their time playing outside than their parents did as children. So our current children spend about 4 hours a week playing outside compared to their parents who spent about 8 or more hours outside. That's quite a reduction. And then another UK study showed that 10% of the people reported that their children had not even been in a natural area in at least a year. That's just crazy to me, just amazing, because nature is so important to our children. And I've got a lot of stuff on this slide because I just wanted to highlight how important nature is to children. And right now we are in the middle of something called Take a Child Outside Week. So here at University of Florida IFAS Extension, where I work, we have a whole week of programming around getting children outside. And this was inspired by Richard Louve's book, Last Child in the Woods, that referred to something as nature deficit disorder and the problems that we're seeing in children because they are spending less time in nature. When children do spend time in nature, they have significant reduction in the symptoms of ADHD. They have improved engagement in classroom and academic settings. Even when they only spent a day learning outside, they had less salivary cortisol, which is a stress hormone, compared to children who learned indoors. And children, when they were outside, showed increased self-discipline and improved impulse control. And I got to tell you, I am now on my second teenager in my own personal life, and I love my teenagers to have improved self-discipline and improved impulse control. That would be great. And that ability to delay gratification also was shown to predict academic success, social competency, and the ability to manage stress as those children grew into adults. So being out in nature really is actually linked with better ability to be a successful adult and member of society. So I want to talk a little bit about what we've seen according to the research that's been done. Of course, it feels like forever that we've been in COVID-19, but in terms of the research world, it's a really short time. So it was hard to find a lot of research. But there was a study of 1,000 Canadians that indicated 40.5% of inactive individuals actually became less active during COVID-19. 33% of them became more active, so that was good, but still a little shocking that a lot of people that were already inactive became less active. And maybe it's not that shocking. We all were told to stay indoors and stay safe. But inactive participants who decided to spend more time engaged in outdoor physical activity were shown to have lower anxiety. And those that classified themselves as flourishing were actually significantly more active outdoors. And physical activity in general, so not just outdoors, this is just general physical activity, was actually lower post-COVID in a study of over 3,000 Americans. Those no longer meeting physical activity guidelines and those with increased screen time, all of that was associated with worsening of depression, loneliness, stress, and worsening of positive mental health. So really, we know this. We know that spending too much time on the screens, spending less time interacting with individuals, and spending less time outdoors is all going to lead to potential risk for worsening of mental health. Outside time was shown to be lower following the COVID-19 restrictions, but those who increased or maintained their outside time reported lower stress and higher positive mental health. So get outside. There was a global study that I found, which was really interesting because this is the one study that actually showed there was increased visitation in parks. So that was nice because most of the studies I found actually showed that we were spending less time outside. So this study and the picture there shows all the countries highlighted in yellow participated in this study. And overall, there was increased park visitation. And this was shown to mitigate some of the stress associated with COVID-19 and provide benefits that help people cope with those physical and mental challenges of the pandemic. So this had to do with adolescents. So this was a great study for me to find because I do focus a lot with children's health and getting children outdoors. So this showed that adolescents reported their well-being and mental health as declining during COVID-19. But getting outdoors and having outdoor activity actually promoted improved well-being for adolescents, regardless of their demographic background. So it was equal across cultures, races, ethnicities, genders. And this shows that it's a proactive means of building resilience to stressors in other arenas as well. So let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to do. We're going to do some Shindenyoku. And Shindenyoku is a Japanese practice that originated in 1982. It is translated as taking a shower in the forest or forest bathing. And it combines all of these things that we just talked about that are really great for both physical and mental health. It combines physical activity, mindfulness, and time in nature. And so here's a slide just about the benefits of meditation, which we also can call mindfulness or prayer, or really any type of activity that allows you to quiet down and center and be mindful. So everything in black are the physical benefits, but I highlighted in green the mental health benefits. So once again, we see decreased incidence of depression, anger and irritability, increased positive thinking, and improved concentration and creativity. And then separately, here is research on the benefits of time spent in nature. Once again, all the black is physical benefits, but the mental benefits are reduced anxiety, depression, and anger, improved mood and attention, and increased feelings of awe, gratitude, and selflessness. So they're similar, but they have different benefits. And when we combine a mindful practice based in a natural experience, an experience out in nature, we have a synergistic benefit of all of this combined together. We have decreased risk for illness and improved health, which leads to decreased healthcare costs and increased productivity. We have a greater connection to nature and valuing nature, and an improved overall resilience, both individually and as a community. And this is just sustainability in all areas: economics, environment, and health. And so some of you may say, well, what if I don't feel comfortable going outside, or here I am attending this and we're inside on a computer, which you just told us wasn't great for our mental health. Well, if you can't go outside, actually the research shows that similar effects can occur just from smelling things like the essential oils of cypress trees. So smelling natural essential oils. Office workers that simply looked at a bouquet of roses for 4 minutes had similar benefits, both mentally and physically. Looking at pictures of nature, which is why I've provided all sorts of beautiful pictures in this presentation, and even just touching wood, having that tactile experience, or imagining being in nature, all provide similar benefits to actually doing it. So we're going to have an experience that, yes, is going to be on the computer, but in a moment, I'm going to suggest that you close your eyes. If you don't want to, you can keep them open, because there's going to be a video of a natural area here in Sarasota County. And I want you just to imagine either your favorite natural area, or imagine being in that area that's on the video, because that will provide similar benefits. So you're going to want to immerse yourself in nature when we do Shindenyoku. You want to be present in the moment. You want to take deep, long breaths, which I will guide you through in the video. You want to slow yourself down and find a spot. If you're actually going out in nature to do this, you would find a spot that feels really comfortable, that you connect with, and just sit there and enjoy. And try to slow down the rushing and the distractions of our daily lives. So don't have a goal. We're very goal-oriented as human beings and Americans. Let that go. Don't rush. Don't judge your process. Just allow it. Don't name things, like don't get out in nature and start naming trees and flowers, because that's not what this particular experience is about. And don't feel you need to clear your mind, because when we're so focused on clearing our mind, we have a goal, and then it's much harder to do that. So don't have expectations during this practice. Just allow yourself to be. When we're out in nature to do Shindenyoku walks, we use many senses. We look, but then we often close our eyes when we're standing or sitting down, so that we can allow our other senses to sort of come in, and we listen. We smell, we might even touch. We usually don't taste, although we could. Sometimes in traditional Shindenyoku, they do tea ceremonies. All right, so what I'd like you to do before I start the video is just get comfortable wherever you are seated, or you can choose to lay down on your floor or on your bed, wherever you are, whatever feels comfortable. Just get really comfortable, get grounded. And then I'm going to start the video. And as I start the video, go ahead and close your eyes if you would like. And this is going to be about 8 minutes. And then we're going to come back and have time to share and do discussion and questions and things like that. But I invite you to immerse yourself in a Shindenyoku experience.
Which translates senses
Right
to fully.
Here we go.
Start our short session together today. I invite you to find a comfortable place to sit or even lay down. And if you're outside, just take a look around and make sure your area is safe from ants or poison ivy or anything else that could be out in the woods with you. And as you get yourself comfortable, I invite you to take a deep breath in through your nostrils.
Sorry.
Filling your lungs and your belly with your breath. Slowly bringing your breath in and then slowly and gently releasing it out through your belly, up through your chest, and out through your mouth. Using your breath as a tool to focus your mind and slow your body down. Breathing deeply in through your nostrils, into your chest, down into your belly, and then exhaling, bringing your breath up from your belly, up through your chest, and out through your mouth. And as you continue to focus on slowing and deepening your breath, begin to just gently gaze around you. And if you're in a natural area, you can leave your eyes open for a bit. But if you're not in a natural area, I invite you to just gently close your eyes and imagine a beautiful favorite place of yours. Perhaps you're in the forest, or on a mountaintop, or at the beach. Immersing yourself first in the vision of where you are. Noticing the different colors, the different shapes, how light plays across the leaves or the water or maybe even the snow. Noticing the shadows around you. Even noticing the different textures of the plants and on the ground. Immersing yourself within this place. And now, if your eyes are still open, go ahead and gently close your eyes, bringing your focus to how this place feels. Perhaps you feel the warmth of the sun upon your face. Perhaps you feel a breeze across your skin. Or perhaps you even reach out and touch the ground underneath you or the bark of a tree next to you. Notice how this place feels. And perhaps there's even an emotion that you feel. Just allow yourself to feel those things. Taking a deep breath in. Bringing your attention next to your sense of smell. Deeply breathing in through your nostrils. Perhaps you're smelling the salt of the ocean or the freshness of the air around you. Or perhaps you can even breathe in the smell of the earth and the soil, that grounded scent of the earth and the plants around you. Perhaps you hear the chirping of birds, the rustling of squirrels in the leaves. Perhaps you hear the waves at the ocean. Or the breeze through the trees. Just noticing and immersing yourself in those sounds. Taking a deep breath in, and in your mind's eye, utilizing all your senses to just bathe within that place that you have brought yourself to. Deepening your breath. Noticing the calm and the peace within you. And as I bring our short session to an end, I invite you to just slowly notice the sounds around you. Bringing your hands together and rubbing the palms of your hands gently together, creating some energy and warmth. And then just slowly and gently bringing the palms of your hands up to cover your eyes, so that as I invite you to open your eyes, you first come back to your own self. And then as you are ready, just gently bringing your hands down and coming back to the present moment.
So welcome back. I hope that you enjoyed that short experience, as virtual as it was. And what we'd like you to do, just to sort of get back into discussion and sharing mode, is just share in the chat box one word about your response to that 8-minute Shindenyoku session. Oh, I'm seeing beautiful things. So I'm seeing brilliant and peace, refreshed, calming, relaxing. I felt gratitude for being here and having the opportunity to do this. Wonderful, another calm, peaceful, mindful, and renewed. So I'm very grateful to see that this had the impact that we all hoped it would for you. And I just want to remind you before we open it up for discussion and questions that remember the slide I had right before we did this, where it's wonderful if you can go outside, and we're going to share some opportunities with you if you're local where you could come on a Shindenyoku experience with me. And it's wonderful if you can do that. But you don't need to spend an hour. You don't need to go outside. You can simply just sit at your desk at work or sit in your chair at home. Take a deep breath and just even 30 seconds of remembering this experience or thinking about a beautiful place in nature, and you will have similar benefits. Bonnie?
Thank you so much, Catherine. It just feels so wonderful to be able to share, and we have a nice small group so we can have an opportunity to have a little bit of a discussion. But I'm so glad that so many people got the opportunity to see what forest bathing is all about. One thing I thought I would throw out as a question to the group and then open it up to questions is the idea that the safest place to really be during the pandemic was to be outside, and that was emphasized over and over. So do you think that that will result in a shift as we sort of hopefully phase out of the pandemic? Do you think that that opportunity and that feeling that that was the place that was safe might have sort of a global shift in terms of how we think about our relationship to nature? I think I'll start with Catherine on that.
Well, let's hope so. I was sad to see that some of the research showed that maybe in some of the research, people spent less time out in nature, because that wasn't what I expected to see. But I think that's dependent on seasonality and geographic location and time that the studies were done. So I really do think that people are changing their perspective of how important it is and how relaxing, remembering how relaxing it is to connect with nature. And I hope that continues.
Thank you. Amanda and Kathy, did you have anything you want to share about that idea? Amanda?
No, Catherine, I think that you articulated that nicely. I think that nature has, just personally, always been sort of a place of refuge for me. And I think, being busy in my work and all this pressure of back-to-back Zoom calls and being in my office, I don't get out as much as I would like to. And this was a really nice reminder that, just moments of thinking about it can really bring the same benefits. And so, it just highlights the effectiveness of that mindfulness practice and the role that nature can play in that. So it's not really answering your question so much as saying thank you to Catherine for highlighting that's available.
Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. That was wonderful. I mean, even if it was a simulation, you felt like you were right there. And so for those of us who may not be able to get out into the woods, it's nice to be able to kind of think about ways to approximate that. And again, this is free, right? Thinking about those activities that we can do that are simple and that are free and that are outside. I think this was a wonderful exercise. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, wonderful. And this is sponsored by Sarasota County Libraries, but we also have Sarasota County Parks that you can get out to. Either you take a journey in your imagination in libraries by reading books, and then also by getting out in nature in our park system. And now, and Catherine partners with parks frequently.